3 weeks down in the Premier League season, and to say the least, it's been pretty bonkers. Last week we thought we were on the right track with some bets. We got there with some, we got there with others. Manchester City left us down, Chelsea left us down, Liverpool left us down. We left a lot of people down. The football layers at Matchbook were pretty. It was a good weekend for the layers at Matchbook. Adrian Clarke returns, Miguel Delaney and Mark O'Hare. And let's start with a moment of the weekend. Miguel, you were at Old Trafford on Monday night. A lot to take away from that game, but what was the highlight for you there?
Yeah, and a lot of moments from two of Bruno Fernandes's passes, actually, particularly one that was going to drill in the volley. Rashford's goal, Sancho's goal, which was incredible. But I think I'm going to go just for any one of Martinez's many challenges, actually. Maybe him kind of giving Salah a bit in the first few seconds of the game, because it very much set the tone for everything we saw. And I suppose maybe a badly needed bit of bite for United that also added to the bite in the Premier League this season.
Anyone in particular he reminds you of? We discussed that there's a bit of Gabriel Heinze about him, Mick.
Yeah. I think Heinze was maybe a bit more of a traditional centre-half, although he's flying the tackles. Whereas Martinez, I think, is more aggressive. From that perspective, I think he's he's quite modern in that regard. And I think he's a better footballer than Heinze as well. But yeah, it's one of the obvious comparisons.
Yeah, and you know what? For a guy that was getting absolutely slated the week before, I think Mark O'Hare said pre-recording week is a long time in politics, it's even longer in football. Adrian Clarke, a key moment for you, key takeaway from the weekend, Major League Soccer, Jesse Marsh ball. It's there and it's working.
It is, yeah. Look, I was critical of Leeds last season, and I'm very much on the fence in regards to Jesse Marsh, but he's improving that team. I think the new signings look really, really good. Aronson in particular is here, there, and everywhere, isn't he? Tyler Adams was great at the weekend. So yeah, seeing Leeds pulverise Chelsea was a real surprise to me, I have to say. And the moment of the game, I think, was Mendy. Mendy being tackled by Aronson inside his own 6-yard box just after the Leeds fans have been goading him anyway. So yeah, it was a heck of a performance from Leeds, and I think maybe we have to start giving them a little bit more respect, particularly in matches at Ellen Road, where I think that red hot atmosphere or white hot atmosphere is going to test a few opponents this year.
Yeah, they were pretty epic. Mark O'Hare, long-time listeners or viewers of the show know my romantic affinity for all things Borussia Dortmund, but last weekend, 2-0 up, going 87th minute, and they lose 3-2 to Werder Bremen. Good stuff. Pure Dortmund all out. They call it Spursing. This is Dortmunding, I think.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely astonishing, to be honest. Dortmund were fortunate to be 2-0 ahead. They completely grinded their way through that game. It was pretty dull, but I turned off long before the end, and just astonishing, really, to see the goal alerts coming through. 89th minute, got one goal back through Lee Buchanan, ex-Derby, and then in the 93rd minute, he equalised, and in the 95th minute, Ollie Burke, Scottish international, grabbed the winner, really. If you watch those 6-7 minutes towards the end back, it's just astonishing, really. It's just why we love football, really. Just completely crazy. It's the first time that's ever happened in the Bundesliga, a team to be 2 goals ahead at that stage of a game and end up losing. And also Bremen's head coach is the youngest coach in the league. He's only 34 years old, so a real sort of standout moment for him in his career. But yeah, just amazing, really. You can't really sum up in words. Just try and find out those kind of last 6-7 minutes and watch it back. It's just
absolutely, it's
crazy stuff.
Yeah. It's worth it, and it's good to see Bremen back, and I think they were good value for that throw at the game. I think Dortmund were very lucky to be 2-0 up, so yeah, we'll move on from that. A couple of winning bets last week, very mixed bag. Miguel Delaney, both teams to score in Fulham Brentford up by half time. You had your money back in your account, happy out. Adrian Clarke as well, Everton Forest under 2.5. For some reason, we were sweating that at the end. Should never have been sweating it, but it came up, and unfortunately, Mark, you were off the target with Brentford, but you had a nice winner there in France again, Angers against Preston. You're 2 out of 2 on insights. You're flying it on insights all league on as well. And Adrian Clarke, you're 2 out of 2 insights as well. But a mixed bag in the podcast, 2 out of 3 in best bets. All right, before we get into today's game, if you haven't got Matchbook account, you do want to get involved. There's always terrific value there. Check out the odds check grid any day, and you will see the value. For example, League Cup action during the week, we were 16.0 on Crawley to beat Fulham. Most of the sportsbooks are 10.0. So there you go. You were getting value there. Use the bonus code Insights30 for £30 welcome offer. That's money back as a free bet if your first bet loses. And you can check out all the terms and conditions of that at insights.matchbook.com. Or you can Google search Matchbook Insights, where we will also have full recap of these selections that we come up with today's shows and the guys' previews as well. We're going to talk all things Nottingham Forest and Tottenham starting Sunday, and let's take a look at the betting. And Mark, I'll start with you here first. But first of all, I have a look at the betting. 7.6, you can back Forest. Tottenham fresh from the grinding 1-0 win against Wolves at 1.5. The draw available at 4.8. Forest getting a 1.25 goal starting the Asian handicap of 1.88, and 2 3/4 is the goal line. And I think one of the things I took away from it, anyway, personally, with Tottenham the last day, Mark, before they were poor in the first half, it was almost like they thought their way through that game. That's a good sign of a team and a well-coached team. There was no major panic in the second half. They kind of figured out what was. But Forest, good start to the season, Mark. But where are we lying in terms of a bet?
Yeah, interesting game. I think Tottenham can be satisfied with their start to the season. There's probably still another gear, 2 or maybe 3 to move up. And, they performed pretty well against Southampton. Were second best, but snatched a point at Chelsea and then beat Wolves in rather underwhelming fashion, as you say. But they got the job done. And Conte was quick to sort of talk about the fact that they lost those 3 matches last season. So to actually be taking 7 points this time around has to be considered a positive, particularly ahead of a busy schedule. And then look at Forest, 4 points on the board. They'll be delighted with that, considering all the new signings they're having to try and bed in at short notice. They were dismantled by Newcastle on the opening day, started strong against West Ham, probably fortunate to get the points overall, and then disappointed to drop the points against Everton last week from winning position. But tough time for them now because they got Spurs and then Man City thereafter. So, they're really having to step up from here. But, I'm adamant Forest will be absolutely fine this season. I was looking at them long and hard with a +1.25 goal start here, with Tottenham having to win by 2 or more goals for you not to make money. But I'm going to bide my time a little bit on Forest just because I still think they are putting the pieces to that puzzle together. And I think you do have to be a little bit concerned about some of their early season performance data rankings. The chances that they're allowing basically to opposition teams. Everton, who we would describe as probably being powder puff, had 19 shots against Forest last week. West Ham had 19 shots. Newcastle had 23 shots. Overall, they've conceded 35 efforts from inside the penalty area and 23 shots on target. So we can see how crucial Dean Henderson has been between the sticks. Just looking at the XG in terms of Forest have conceded over 5.5 goals through match day 3 on XG. They've actually only shipped 3 goals themselves. So, the opposition is already averaging 0.7 XG more than Forest on a per game basis. And that's quite alarming, and that needs to be addressed. And I'm sure it will do the longer we sort of get into the campaign. But at the moment, when you're coming up against an attack that could be as formidable as Tottenham's, that is a concern for me, really. And that's what's steering me towards Spurs to win and under 4.5 goals at around 1.85. Spurs have won 10 of the last 15 trips to promoted teams over the last 5 years. Decent record. Their record when travelling to teams in 8th and below last year, 8 wins, 3 draws and 2 defeats. And if you look at the same record under Conte, 6 wins, 3 draws and just the 1 defeat. But more impressively so, they kept 7 clean sheets in those 10 matches too. So I still think there's a work to do defensively from Spurs. I think Forest will be quite lively, backed by a big vociferous City ground crowd. But I just back the more quality team to kind of come through. I don't envisage 5 or more goals in this match. So, again, talk about it many times, but you get such a raft of correct scores on your side. I think it sort of pays dividends.
Yeah, so Tottenham under 4.5 for Mark O'Hare, 1.84. Miguel, slightly more aggressive for you, the bigger price. Tottenham and under 2.5. You fancy them to win, but only to win 1 or 2-0.
Yeah, also I think that, we spoke last week about how we expected Forest to follow their approach in the Championship away from home, which is much tighter, and they were probably more open than maybe we expected, as Mark's pointed there with some of the stats and shots. But I fully expect, because this is the first Big Six team they're playing, I fully expect them to adopt a more defensive approach in this game, which is why I think it'll be a tight game. Maybe another where Harry Kane has to rescue things. That's possibly not a bad bet in itself. But yeah, I think it's going to be a tight game, and one that Tottenham will have to basically really quite grind out to get a result. It's been a little bit of an odd start to the season in that regard for Spurs. And they came in being spoken up so much, not least among ourselves. I was kind of describing them as Conte's small war machine, But they haven't really quite clicked in that regard yet. There's been, and I mean, I think bar maybe the second 45 minutes against Southampton, elements of the Chelsea game, there's been a sense of still kind of finding themselves while players like Son have been off form, which has put even more of a kind of dependency on Kane. And I just expect that to continue for the moment. And this to be maybe an awkward match, but one they'll just about get through because they do seem to have developed that knack.
Yeah, it's 4.1. Miguel's bet a bit more aggressive than Mark there, and Tottenham to win either 1 or 2-0. That's just over 3-1. Adrian, Clarke, going a slightly different direction here. You expect it to be a bit more open than the guys suggest there.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I can absolutely see why the cases have been put forward for both those. You would have to fancy Spurs, and you look at Forest, very well organised under Steve Cooper, and yeah, they're capable of being competitive and keeping the score down. No doubt about that. I just think that this might be slightly more exciting than maybe we were imagining. Spurs have still scored 7 goals without really playing that well this season, and I think that is quite ominous for everybody else. So, Son's not been great at all. Sooner or later, he's going to click. Kulusevski's been pretty good. Kane, it's finished off a few chances, but hasn't been maybe as lively as he can be. I just think sooner or later they're going to come alive. And the Forest back three were brilliant in the Championship. Cook, Worrell and McKenna. Older guys, not all of them old, but grizzled defenders, but they're not quick. They lack a lot of pace. They've got 2 new wing backs either side. I think Spurs could, if they score early, they could cut loose a little bit against Nottingham Forest. And the City Ground, it was a strange place last year because we talked about them going on the road and being cagey and tight and lots of low-scoring matches. The City Ground had the joint highest in terms of matches that were over 2.5 goals. 61% of matches there last season ended with 3 or more. And I was at a couple of them where they played good teams, a good Fulham team, a good Sheffield United team, and they conceded goals. So, yeah, I just think Tottenham will probably win this game, but we might see goals. I want to get Forest. I don't want to write off Forest's chances in front of that bumper home crowd that Miggs was talking about there. I think they'll attack the match in a way. And I just think it could be exciting. I think both teams could score. I'm going to go for over 2.5 goals here because look, if Spurs get into the groove, I think they'll score 2 or 3 or even 4 on their own. No problem.
All right. Okay. I'm going to slightly have to go against you there. I'm going to take Mark's selection, Tottenham, another under 4.5 goals at 1 point.
You're out of order, Sully. Yeah. Nah.
I know. I always am, mate. Yeah, but you know what? I might side with you in the next game. So it's just a bit of,
I'm always going to query it, but no, it's all good.
Question it away, mate. By all means, yeah. But look, there's differing opinions there. If you're watching and viewing today, you might have your own opinion. That's the great thing about this podcast, and the guys might send you over the edge either ways in a good way. All right, we move on. Arsenal and Fulham. Going to leave with you for this ASC, top of the league. Okay. 3 games in. They're on the march. I think they're into 14.0 to win the league now, AC, so I get your money down. 1 point.
Hold fire on that.
You know what they're good as, though? They're good as being home favourites, but they're pretty short this week. 1.34, Fulham at 10.5. The draw available at 6.0. Fulham getting a 1.5 goal start on the NH and handicap line at 2.04. So Arsenal would have to win by two goals or more for that one. And 3 is the total, 1.85. And look, 9 goals, 3 games. The Arsenal podcast you're involved in is called the Handbrake Off. And that's very much how it feels with the Gunners at the moment, Adrian, isn't it? But look, Fulham have brought plenty to the table this season. But Jesus, hard not to like Arsenal in this spot.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you got to fancy Arsenal. They're in a rich vein of form. They're looking good, really smooth, cohesive football. The forward players have been excellent. Maybe Saka's probably the one that is yet to catch fire, so maybe this will be his day. So yeah, no, lots to like about Arsenal. And every time they take to the field, I think they believe they're going to score 2, 3, 4 goals. That's the mood they're in. Fulham have really surprised me with their change of tactics, which I think is smart. Less of the ball, more about transitions and counters. Because in the Championship, they were the second highest possession team. In the Premier League, no one's made fewer successful passes than Fulham. So they've literally started again with a different brand of football, and they're breaking really fast. They're tireless in midfield, aren't they, with Palhinha and Harrison Reed. When they put balls in the box, they're blooming dangerous. aren't they? I mean, Alexander Mitrovic is in good nick. He might miss a few, but no one's had more shots in the Premier League this season than Alexander Mitrovic, 15. No one's had more headed shots, 7. Only one player has actually had more touches inside the box than Fulham's, and this is Fulham's Mitrovic, and that's Gabriel Jesus. So they're finding penetration. They're finding a way to get their main man into positions to score. So look, I looked at Arsenal and both teams to score here. To be honest, it was a good price. I think 2.9, but I do expect Arsenal to control and dominate the bulk of this game, and they're capable of keeping a clean sheet. So I've sided away from it in the end, but that is something to consider because Fulham will pose a threat. I'm sort of imagining crosses coming in and Mitrovic peeling onto Zinchenko. I mean, that would be my message if I was. I don't think you'd need the message from Silva. Well, right wing crosses, go and stand on Zinchenko. So that's a possible issue for Arsenal to contend with. But yeah, I've got to fancy them. What's the best way in? It has to be goals. So yeah, Arsenal and over 2.5 is the way that I'm looking at it. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if this is a 3-1, 2-1, 4-2, something like that. I think Fulham can have their moments.
Miguel, 3 games in, as we said, with Arsenal, but I think there's something good here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, again, there's always this kind of note of caution with Arsenal, not just because of this season, the fixtures, but just because of the last few years, and that we won't really know the truth of this team until they have some of their bigger games. Now they've got a spell of them. It starts with United in a week or so, and then October is really tough, where they basically it's Spurs, Liverpool, and Manchester City. But I suppose key to that really is building up momentum and confidence. I mean, that's part of it as well. So they actually go into those fixtures much better set than they would say were this time last year when they started with Chelsea and Manchester City after Brentford. And again, it is a cliche, but you can only take on what's in front of you. And they haven't just taken them on; they've blown them away. Basically, other than that, a little bit of a dip after they conceded against Palace, Arsenal have basically been just consistently brilliant this season. They've been convincing in almost every minute beyond that. I do think Fulham I've been impressed them so far this season. Maybe not quite as tight as I expected, but they've shown immense resilience both against Liverpool and Brentford the weekend in particular, given the way they lost a 2-goal lead and came back to win it, which means I think they'll go into this game in defiant mood. I do expect Silva to lock it up. I don't think they'll be as open as they were against Liverpool or as aggressive, which means Arsenal may have to work that bit harder for an opening goal here. But then that's another element of Arsenal's season. Previously in matches where you would have expected them to, the game at the weekend is almost a classic case of this. Bournemouth under Scott Parker are a team that basically sit deep and defend. Now, for most of the last 2 years, that Arsenal have had real issues with that, particularly because they've all, and in the early days of Arteta especially, they've been very flat in their play, whereas now there's none of that. They're all angles, they're all movement. And I think this will be an interesting clash between both of those approaches, with Arsenal having a bit too much. It's why I'm not going for Arsenal to be maybe as high scoring as the last few games, because I think Fulham will make it difficult for them, but just the quality and momentum is there with Arsenal.
Adrian, Mark, to get you in a second, but Adrian, we talked about pre-recording. Like, technically, if it works out the way we think it will with Anthony Gordon with Chelsea, Arsenal have got a steal with Jesus, right? What they paid for him.
Yeah, I mean, you consider 45 and Gordon's going to go for 60. I mean, it's bonkers, absolutely mad, isn't it? But Miguel is right about the angles. That was the word he used there. Jesus finds angles and he makes runs on angles, and he's so mobile and so sharp in the way that he makes those runs that he pulls those sort of compact blocks out of position. And because they're now kind of fluid, and you've got Martinelli coming on off the wing, Saka sometimes, Ødegaard's flying into the box, sometimes even Granit Xhaka, they're giving these defensive teams more headaches with their movement. So, yeah, I'm hoping to see more of the same. And, yeah, I just don't fancy Fulham's defence. I know they've done all right so far. Yeah. Just still think it's a championship back four that's maybe overperforming at the moment.
Mark O'Hara, Arsenal for you as well, but coming at it from a slightly different angle.
Yeah, not a huge amount really I can add to what the guys have already said. I'll just kind of drill over the usual numbers, which I do when Arsenal are at home in this kind of spot. So since 2018-19, they've got a 68% win record at home to bottom half teams. That increases to a 70% win record when hosting teams as odds-on favourites since 2018-19. More interestingly, so they're 1.35 here. Well, I looked at their record when being priced up at 1.5 or shorter at home. 19 wins, 3 draws, and 1 defeat. So they're very, very consistent at putting away the teams they're expected to win against. So yeah, I expect them to do so yet again. Being very impressed by them so far this season. I just took a bit of an issue with the goal line. Over 3 goals is odds on. The goal expectancy is 3.25. That's pretty high, even for a Premier League game. I think it's still a fraction too high. I would kind of verge towards what Miguel was saying about sort of Fulham being probably a little bit more astute in how they approach this match and potentially not going with fire to fire against Arsenal. So I chucked in under 4.5 goals alongside the Arsenal win again. I know I just keep doing the same bet, but I looked at Arsenal's 49 home Premier League games under Miguel Arteta. Only 5 of them have featured 5 goals or more. That's quite surprising, but even more so, you look at Arsenal's defensive record this season. They're just not giving away clear-cut opportunities at all. They're averaging just 6 shots in the box conceded per game so far in the Premier League, and less than 0.7 XG conceded per game, which is really, really impressive. It's up there with the best. So I think Fulham might find it hard, and I think, as long as Mitrovic has been involved and hit the headlines many times so far this season, last week he missed catalogues of opportunities really to score. He really should have scored before he did score. So that would worry me from a Fulham perspective.
Yeah, look, there's a couple of ways both these bets win, and I know Miguel agrees with Adrian's initial assessment. Arsenal over 2.5 at 1.84. There is, like I said, a couple of ways these win. So, Adrian, we're going to go with you in this one, mate. Congratulations, that's 1-1 with you and Mark. So we'll see what we get on with Chelsea and Leicester, because there's a lot of differing opinions with Chelsea and Leicester. I don't know what way we're going to call them down. And what I'm going to christen this one as the Wesley Fofana derby. At 1.41, you can back the Blues here. Leicester 9.0. Wow. The draw available 5.4. The main handicap line, Leicester getting a 1.25 goal start in the Asian handicap 2.02, and 2 3/4 is the total shaded towards the over 1.84. Miguel Delaney, start with you here because you fancy this one as a kind of a talking game. I'm interested to see, you fancy Chelsea to win with a clean sheet. Obviously, no Koulibaly here. They haven't signed Fofana at the time of recording. Are you not worried about the Chelsea rearguard, but are Leicester that inept right now that you just believe this is a solid bet anyway?
Well, it's partly down to Leicester's own struggles, but it's also down to, I think, Tuchel's responses to these situations in the past. I mean, I think actually one of the hallmarks of Tuchel's time at Chelsea, more than anything, has been a solid defensive structure. And yet, every so often, like say the 5-2 against West Brom, there's an inexplicable game where they just start conceding. And Leeds felt along those lines, not identical, but similar. But I think Tuchel's response to those games is it's an immediate get back to basics to ensure that they're not open again, to build defensively again. And it's just because of that, as well as the issues at Leicester, that I just fancy Chelsea to lock it up and try and be as professional as possible in this match. I don't think they'll be putting on any sort of attacking statement in that regard. And tied into that, of course, is that we still don't really know what Leicester's attack is in that regard. I think it's more down to how Tuchel will approach. And I know Koulibaly's out, and that's an issue. But I think we'll see a return to that kind of, because it's not. I mean, when Chelsea do that, it's not really just about the back line either. It's really almost kind of seven outfield players going to come together to form this sort of defensive matrix that's so difficult to work through.
I don't mind that bet. It's 2.14. It's an interesting price because, as well, if Chelsea don't score, and offensively, I just want to get your take on this, Miguel. Havertz, Mount, and Sterling, they've had 0 goals between them and 1 assist. That's got to be a worry. Well, I don't know who they sign. Like, Anthony Gordon isn't coming in the door and automatically elevating him. Not in my opinion, anyway.
Well, it's why I still expect them to get Aubameyang ultimately. It just makes sense. Barca want to get rid. Chelsea need a number 9. Tuchel's worked with them before. Obviously, there's still a bit of a gap between the price. But I do expect that to happen. It's just the most obvious solution for everyone. And I mean, if or when it happens, it would bring Chelsea spending up so high. I mean, it really is a statement somewhere in that regard.
Todd Bowley's going to go what? Aubameyang? Yeah, he's a huge name. 90 million. Let's give him 90 million. He's going to do
Oh,
something stupid, isn't he?
And in that one, to be fair, like Bowley, for all the perceptions of Chelsea, Bowley has been kind of conscious of not signing players that Tuchel doesn't want, which is why they pretty much didn't sign, why they haven't signed Koundé and why they haven't signed Ronaldo. But it's a bit more unified. But of course, he's if he gets any sort of go ahead, Bowley's willing to go all in.
Yeah, I'd say Adrian, you and a few other Arsenal fans would have driven Aubameyang to the airport at that time. Like, so you're not exactly
give him away.
You're not going to be breaking him come back.
No, look, he can still score goals. His head wasn't in the game. We saw it on the documentary. You know, there was a clash, wasn't there, with Miguel Arteta, and he had to go. It doesn't mean he's a bad player. Doesn't mean he couldn't score goals for Chelsea. He can. He scored goals for Barcelona, didn't he? I think the only reason they want to get rid of him is because they've got Lewandowski now, isn't it? So, I fully expect Chelsea to overpay for Aubameyang, but doesn't mean he won't succeed there. He likes playing under Tuchel, doesn't he? We'll see.
It's another lever for Barcelona, of course. But what in terms of bet here, AC, again, we talked about the vibes are bad with Leicester. Like, aren't they? Like, Tielemans wants away from Fan, obviously, and it's just it's not looking great right now.
No, there are bad vibes. Yeah, that was a shocker, wasn't it, to give up a lead against Southampton at home and get beat. That's really poor. But still, look at the team, and it's not bad. They've got goals in them. They've scored in every game this season, haven't they? You know, scored a couple at Arsenal. Could have had more in that game. Yeah. Mark rightly points out the fact that Arsenal haven't gifted much to the opposition. Well, Leicester scored 2 and could have 4 if decisions had gone their way or a little bit more luck. So I think as an attacking force, maybe we're under appreciating them. You know, Barnes is back now. Maddison's in a great vein of form as well. So, and Chelsea aren't defending well. We saw that against Leeds, and obviously the Koulibaly absence will disrupt them to some degree. I think Mendy's confidence is quite low as well. I was looking at both teams to score as my way in. I mean, Leicester always score away. I don't think we could. I know this is a new season, but they've done it already this season. So that's a continuation of the pattern last year. 84% of their away games last season, which is almost all of them, they scored. They're comfortable going anywhere and offering a threat. Chelsea last season, even though there is rightly a perception that they grind out wins, at home they were no sure thing last season. Under Tuchel, they've been ropey, I would suggest, in front of the Stamford Bridge fans too often for their liking. 63% of their home matches last season saw both teams score. I know based on what I saw of them at Leeds, I wouldn't back them to keep a clean sheet here either. So, both teams to score stood out for me because of the numbers and also because of the price. It's quite a generous 1.95 at the moment, so you're almost getting even money on that. So it's data backed, really, but yes, it was the standout for me.
Mark, what are you thinking of this one? What's the way in terms of a bet for you?
Well, I found it tricky because I want to see what the Chelsea defence makeup is this weekend. They had Reece James playing in a back 3 at Leeds, which I just don't get it, to be honest. You've got someone like Azpilicueta who can come in. I know Koulibaly is suspended and Fofana definitely won't sign before the weekend. Cucurella can also play left centre-back as well. I know it's not ideal, but they do have options there. But I mean, from a Leicester perspective, I would normally be completely all in with Adrian on both teams to score at that price. Normally I would, and I was, when Leicester went to Arsenal. They've scored 5 goals so far this season, but they've scored those 5 goals from 1.5 expected goals. That's not sustainable, and neither are their underlying metrics so far this season. Only Forest have had fewer shots. Only Bournemouth have had fewer shots on target. Nobody's had fewer shots in the box this season than Leicester. And I think if you watch the matches against Southampton and Brentford, they were just directionless for most of it. And it's just a pale shadow of the team that we've become to know really under Brendan Rodgers. And it's quite sad, really. He admitted his team were desperate and nervous after taking the lead against Southampton. So we've already talked about defensive issues through the last 12, 18 months, really. So to me, there's issues now in both boxes. There's a mentality and mindset issue there too. And Leicester haven't fared well when going to top 6 finishes, either when they've been playing well or playing badly. So the last 3 seasons, they finished 5th, 5th and 8th. their record at top 6 teams during that time: 2 wins, 3 draws, 12 defeats, giving up around 2.25 goals per game on average, which is pretty poor. They've kept 2 clean sheets in their last 27 away, and they've won twice in 15 on the road, both of which were at relegated clubs. So, yeah, I mean, I find it hard to be with Leicester in some way, but I did think potentially there is an opportunity for BTTS, but I've kind of gone back to Chelsea and under 4.5 because Chelsea just don't score freely. They've scored fewer than 3 goals in 14 of the last 15 home Premier League games. The one match they did score 3 goals in was against Leeds. 2 of them were penalties. So they tend to just kind of just get over the line. So, yeah, I found it tricky, this one.
It's a tough game. I find myself believing Mark and believing Mig with his sort of hunch that Tuchel will shut up shop, which you can absolutely see. So, and I believe the case I put forward. So it is a really awkward match, I think, to have a gamble on.
Sorry, mate. I'll make the decision for you. I went with Mark for game 1, you for game 2. Miguel, your one jumped off the sheet for me. Home team clean sheet, good odds against 2.14. Yeah, that's all right. I'm quite happy with that. And again, that keeps the 0-0 on side. I don't think there's too many goals in this one, personally, from the way I look at it. All right, Saturday lunchtime kickoff down south. Southampton take on Manchester United. Let's take a look at the betting as we have it at matchbook.com. 4.5, you can back Southampton. Manchester United here 1.83. The draw available at 4.2. The main handicap line as we have it at matchbook.com is Southampton getting 3/4 goal start at 1.9, and 3 is the total shaded towards the under. And Miguel, Delaney, Manchester United have to back it up here now, right? Don't they? This can't be the ultimate letdown. But Southampton, a hard team to get a read on. They played well last weekend. Tricky team, good team going forward. What do you make of this one?
But this is the thing, just, I mean, because we'll spend so much time talking about Manchester United, I suppose it's worth just actually giving Southampton some credit.
Yeah.
Because it feels like this is about the 3rd or 4th season in a row where, or more so maybe the 3rd or 4th spell, where we've gone into a period of games and everyone expects, well, this is going to be it for Hasenhüttl. It's over now. You know, recruitment not great. Squad seems to be turning off him. It's surely over Southampton. And he always pulls it out of the bag. And like they've been really impressed, given that they were everyone's kind of smart tip to go down. They've started the season superbly. And I mean, he's had, despite that 1-9-0, he's given United a few awkward challenges over the last few years. I think it's a very difficult game. And in some ways, I know this might sound preposterous, in some ways it's more challenging than Liverpool because to a certain degree, the United players were always going to be motivated for that. A, because it's Liverpool. B, because of the context they're playing Liverpool, where they just had to show something. They have been so flat and lacking in intensity against Brentford. So, I mean, to a certain degree, the motivation for that game almost take care of itself. And it cuts back to what we're saying at the top of the show about Martinez's aggression. That straight away United were into it. And that was added to the fact that Liverpool haven't been themselves. Whereas now they've had the win. There's, I suppose, psychologically, there's a slight danger of the hangover, not the hangover, but being lulled into a false sense of security, which is why United have to be at it from the start. And secondly, I mean, in the pure kind of, I suppose, techniques of the game, Liverpool had a big issue on Monday in that it was very far from their first choice midfield, which meant they couldn't press anywhere close to the way that Brighton and Brentford did. That gave United an out, which meant the defence wasn't under the same pressure. Whereas I don't think we'll see that from Southampton. So from that perspective, I think just it's a very intriguing. And it's another one of those games, like we mentioned the other night in relation to Liverpool. It's another one of those games where actually the first few exchanges, the first few approaches, how the teams line up, is actually going to tell us a lot about how it's going to go. And from that perspective, I think it's a very difficult game to call. But I think it's going to be sufficiently open that we're going to see both teams score.
All right, Adrian, you couldn't nearly tell probably from the first few minutes if United are worth backing here in this situation. But it is kind of fascinating and it's kind of simple that the sport in general has never really changed in terms of you start with your back 4 and your back two centre backs. And if you can get that right and Varane coming back in, and if you can stay fit, and that's a massive if with Varane the last couple of years. But that combination looked good, albeit again, like Miguel said, misfire in Liverpool. But they seem like some good building blocks for Ten Hag to start with.
Yeah, it was a good performance, wasn't it? They did ever so well, and the team looked right. Yeah, I agree. Martinez had a much better game with Varane next to him, which was great. And Malacia looked excellent. I thought a left back, real sort of tigerish player. So yeah, I think that it will give them a lot of confidence. Obviously, they were in a bit of trouble ahead of that game, but they did raise their game and they showed the fans what they're capable of. I do think, Miguel's right about Liverpool being sort of very weakened, weren't they? Severely weakened, and it allowed them to play out. But they did also change their tactics, as we hinted they might do. I looked at the long pass percentage against Brentford. It was 6.9%. Yeah, looking to play it short all the time. In this game, it was almost 21%. So they look to definitely bypass the press, and I think they'll have to do that again against Southampton, because Southampton are brilliant at that, and they'll cause them problems. So, yeah, my issue with the Saints is that despite two brilliant comebacks, excellent managerial decisions from Ralph Hasenhüttl, making changes in the game, turning the tide in their favour, going a bit bold, I still think personnel-wise they're short. I don't think they've got that much up front. I know Che Adams is doing well at the minute, but have many goal scoring regulars. And at the back, obviously gone to a back four, which isn't what he wanted to do at the start of the season. He saw it as a back three. So he's already changed to a back four, and he got newcomers to the Premier League, particularly with Bella catch-up. So we'll see. We'll see how they fare here. I just think Man United will back it up, actually. I was sufficiently impressed enough with them to think that they can go to St Mary's and win this game. So because barring those changes from Hasenhüttl, they would have lost to Leeds, and they might not have turned it around against an underfiring or a misfiring Leicester. So he's been great, but I'm not sure the team are great. So I'll back United here.
On United, so Adrian, would you start Casemiro? Would you just leave McTominay in and maybe bring Martial back, which is what we're probably expecting?
Martial will play. I would play Martial instead of Elanga for sure. Casemiro, it depends on his physical condition, doesn't it? I wouldn't necessarily. I wouldn't. I'd probably stick with the same team apart from Martial. But if he plays Casemiro, you couldn't blame him for that. He's a top defensive midfielder, isn't he?
Yes.
They might be paying too much for him. They might be, a bit high on the wages, etc. But he is the type of player they've lacked. So for me, his arrival improves them instantly.
Yeah, and I don't really buy that they're buying him 2 or 3 years too late either. That's my own person. But I think if you get 2 or 3 good years out of him, he'll pay for himself. Mark, I don't think you have a bet in there, but anything to add to what the guys had?
Yeah, I'm more in sort of Miguel's corner here. I think this is a possible banana skin for United after the Liverpool match. I think in terms of tactically, this is going to be very different to what they set up with Old Trafford. And I think you're going to meet a team who will absolutely match them, if not better them, in terms of distance, run, effort, speed, physicality. That's what Saints are all about, really. They're a pressing machine, and they absolutely love the prospect of trying to sort of get the better of a Big Six team. They've burnt many people when backing short-priced away teams at St Mary's, and Hasenhüttl's record at home to top 6 finishes, 6 wins, 7 draws, 9 defeats. It's very reasonable. Last season, Liverpool and Chelsea won here out of the Big Six. They've taken points off United in 2 of the last 3 seasons. And I think what's remarkable really about Southampton is how quickly they tend to start against the Big Six. So if United aren't on it from the off, they're going to be in for a really difficult game. So I looked at those 22 games against the Big Six at home under Ralph. They've led at half-time in 9 of those. They scored first in 13 and scored before half-time in 14. They scored before half-time in 5 of their 6 home games against the Big Six last season. So they're a team that absolutely go for you from the first whistle. And I thought it was quite interesting because United led at half-time just 4 times away from home last season. They won 6 away games since the start of last season. They kept 3 clean sheets on the road and conceded before half-time in 60% as well. So I looked at the United half-time win price, which is 2.24. I wondered whether that's worth a little lay, actually. And also just kind of going on the goal line, I've not sort of pushed the button here at all, but I thought under 3.25 goals could be interesting, around 1.73. 13 of Southampton's last 16 at home to the Big Six have featured under 2.5 goals. They tend to sort of go against the grain when they meet the Big Six in terms of switching things up a little bit, going a little bit more sort of conservative in how they play and just trying to hit teams on the break. So I think this might be quite difficult for United to try and play through them. They won't get the same spaces in behind as they did against Liverpool. And just interested to see if they can back it up. But I personally wouldn't back them at odds on.
Yeah, differing opinions again, gentlemen. Like to see that. It is a game of opinions. Miguel showed a 1.65 both teams to score. If you do want to pair that with Adrian's Manchester United to win and both teams to score, that's currently available at 3.5, which is 5-2. But you know what, AC, I'm going to go with you. Yeah, night 1.83. Let's lock it in. I don't think that's going to be anyone's.
Do you know what? Having listened to Mark there, I'm like, oh, can I change my mind?
I'm going with you knowing this. My money. So.
I remember this game vividly last year. Southampton had a pretty poor start, and United had just come fresh from thrashing Leeds, and Southampton was struggling for players, and they turned in a performance at St Mary's in a nice warm day down on the south coast, and probably haven't recovered mentally from that because I was big on United that day.
Mark, I think we backed United about 2 times in the last 4 years, so I think this will be the 3rd time. So I'm quite happy to level out the ledger. Let's take a quick recap of what we have so far. Again, if you're listening or watching, though, we're kind of rattling through a lot of picks, matchbook insights or insights.matchbook.com for a full recap of these selections from Wednesday evening onwards. Spurs to beat Nottingham Forest and under 4.5 total goals, 1.84. Arsenal to beat Fulham and over 2.5 total goals, 1.84. Going with Miguel's show in Chelsea and Leicester home team clean sheet, 2.14. And Manchester United are at 1.83. Insights.matchbook.com. All right, well, we got Adrian Clarke, EFL. You've got a couple of selections here from League One, first of all. MK Dons, Morecambe, under 2.5 goals, 1.8.
Yeah, I'll rattle through these. Yeah, I like an under, as you know. These are 2 of the bottom 3, actually, at the moment. So neither team's had a good start to the season. And that can impact, I think, matches like this. Suddenly you think both managers will go in with that mentality of not wanting to throw more points away. So that's something to consider. Morecambe have lacked goals so far. 4 out of their 5 games have had 2 goals or less in them. They've only scored twice. They've had 3 blanks. So it's not really happening for them at the top end of the pitch, but they've kept things tight across 4 of those 5 games. Similar story for MK Dons. They've only scored 3 goals, haven't got going yet at all. They've blanked 3 times already. Didn't happen a lot last season, but yeah, it's a new look MK Dons, and they're not fully at it. And yeah, they were really poor away from home to Cambridge and Ipswich MK, and it wouldn't surprise me if they're not great in this game as well. So I'm just going for a low scoring game. Not sure who'll win, but yeah, under 2.5 goals. Given how they've both started at 1.8 is my first selection.
All right, and Leyton Orient to win another 3.5 versus Hartlepool. Odds against AC 2.18.
I was happy with the price here because you're talking about the table toppers, Leyton Orient at home to undoubtedly one of the weakest sides in the division. Certainly at the start of this season, they've been quite weak. Hartlepool, Leyton Orient look great under Richie Wellens. They've been behind for a grand total of 3 minutes this season. Several clean sheets already. And the only time they did go behind, 3 minutes later, they equalised and whatnot. They've only conceded twice, clean sheets in both their home matches so far, Leyton Orient. And Hartlepool were terrible travellers last year. Awful, really. Very rarely did they get themselves an away win. They've proved they can defend with a couple of sort of tight home games. That took a couple of goalless draws, Hartlepool at home, but on the road, not good at all. They've been beaten a couple of times already, Hartlepool. So yeah, for me, Leyton Orient to win is the call, and it's how do you get in at a backable price? Well, if you pair it with under 3.5 goals, assuming therefore that the Hartlepool either don't score or get 1 max, then I think that offers a bit of value. So yeah, Orient and under 3.5, please.
All right, good man. Great show with Ipswich as well last week. Comfortable 3-0 win there. Great show. Odds against as well. Mark, you've been tearing it up in League On this year. Brest against Montpellier, over 2.5, 1.85. Both of these teams seem to be hitting the overs in the last couple of weeks in BTTS.
Yep, and they both seem to feature in my insights column on a weekly basis as well. And that's because the prices are a little bit low for 2 teams who are coached by managers who basically prefer to play expansive attacking football, and goals tend to flow in their matches. And you look at Brest, who do have weaknesses in defence, particularly on the flanks, exposed by Lens on the opening weekend, lost 3-2, hit back to draw 1-1 with Marseille and generated over 2 expected goals, and then beat Angers 3-1 last weekend away. Red card obviously influencing things there, but they created loads of opportunities there too. So their home record under Miguel de Sakarian, they've scored in 16 of 20 home league going games. They've recorded just 5 clean sheets. That's across a 20-game sample and 2.95 goals per game. So pretty strong. And you've got Montpellier, who beat a very poor Troyes team 3-2 before being sort of cut to ribbons by PSG 5-2 in the capital. And then they lost from a winning position against last weekend at home 2-1. Again, red cards sort of playing a part there. But so they've got the defensive midfielder Fayed suspended now. Admittedly, too, their best playmaker, Teji Savanier, is suspended here too. That's probably why they're being written off by the market here, but they'll still pack a punch going forward. Traditionally, they're the great entertainers in France. They've got a load of exciting young players with plenty of pace and ability in forward areas. So, but likewise, they're just far from trustworthy defensively. Huge concerns at centre-half, and similarly to Leicester in the Premier League, just can't defend set pieces for their life. So I think you've got ingredients there for a really goal-heavy game. Montpellier have scored in 14 of 20 away games since last season, keeping 5 clean sheets on the road, 3.2 goals per game on average. You mentioned their season stats already. Combined, we've seen BTTS in 6-6 and overs in 5 and 6.
Miguel, don't have a bet necessarily, but talk to me about the dominance that's occurring. This won't surprise anybody in the Bundesliga about Bayern Munich. You obviously backed them -6 last week against Bochum. And obviously with PSG in France, you backed PSG -5 away at Lille. I mean, whatever about Bochum, Lille, it's only been 2 or 3 years since, they won the league Untitled. But what do we do from here? I mean, like, they're both, like PSG this weekend, for example, 1.2. At home to Monaco, another team that have, been on the cusp of Champions League football the last year. And Bayern Munich are home to Mönchengladbach, again, another team that we've seen in the Champions League. They're 1.23. Do we just put them in our coupons every week? Because at the moment, with both sides, I don't know where they're dropping points.
Well, I mean, it almost strikes me that maybe there's I was thinking about it as the results came in at the weekend. Again, another one where they're just battering opposition. And because of their financial strength, if you really want to bring it down to the numbers, I mean, maybe a sensible thing to do. Certainly up until the World Cup, because the World Cup will change things, because they've both got so many players who will play. Maybe a sensible bet is basically just do a double every week with both of those teams and score more than 3. I'm sorely tempted to do it. Another one along those lines, basically, maybe Mbappe, Haaland, and Lewandowski to score every weekend. and see how you get on with that. But yeah, I just think this is. I mean, it's very worrying for European football in general. I think that's a much bigger discussion. But in terms of how we can respond to it here, I just think there's going to be so many of these big, and the way they've started the season, and I think it's all the more relevant because, especially like with PSG, whereas usually you could be in situations where Neymar and Messi kind of take their foot off the handle, like they lose motivation. Not this year, because they want to go into that World Cup in absolutely prime condition. I think that's one reason that PSG have started so well, and Bayern, of course, just tend to be ruthless anyway. So yeah, I do just think there's something in that. I'm going to start experimenting with it over the next few weeks.
Mark, come on, give us some advice here. I mean, like they're going to be ridiculously short. They're going to be in every coupon every weekend, so it is hard to find value with these, mammoths in their league. Like Miguel said, even with PSG, they're starting to look like a team. The Galtier comes in and he takes over, and they're actually working with each other, and that's really dangerous for every other side in France.
Yeah, I mean, what I'd say about European football is what the rule was always football is cyclical, really. And when Man United were dominating the league, we assumed it was the worst thing in the world. Juventus were dominating Serie A, and they've been dethroned recently. It wasn't that long ago since PSG have lost the title twice. Monaco won it not long ago. Lille won it as well. It can happen, but I know long-term things are unraveling a little bit, and it's quite ominous, particularly in Germany, what's happening. But in terms of a bet, if you're backing PSG and buying at those prices each week, it's only going to be at 1.5 to double. Some people might be fancying it, but you can back -1 on the handicap, and if they win by 2 goals or more, you're just boosting that price up a little. You might get to sort of 1.7, 1.8 that way. But Yeah, I probably take the goals option that Miguel's talking about. It's a bit more fun to follow as well. So if they do start spanking teams, you're not really too bothered about the future of European football because you're getting paid out.
It's one for us to think about, Miguel. Saturday morning, mate. You just tell us what you're doing, and we're just gonna follow you in there. You're gonna guide us. There's a way in. There's an angle. And they're both at home this weekend too. But yeah, it's pretty ominous signs in France and Germany. When we're 2 or 3 games in, we already know who's won the league. That's not the league enough. But you know what? We got a title race in the Premier League, hopefully. Now. All right, let's get to best bets. Miguel, Delaney, a couple of weeks ago, you had this selection with Man City to win an over 3.5 versus Bournemouth. You're thinking there's going to be a fight back here with Liverpool, and same bet at Anfield on Saturday.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean I have that much confidence in Liverpool at the moment in the long term. But there were real concerns about Monday and bigger issues than I think even absences. But they haven't won yet. Not that they're due a win, but I think so much is primed for them to really come out flying against Bournemouth. And it'll be a little bit like United on Monday, actually, in that the motivation takes care of itself. They'll be straight at it. And I think this is going to be a very, very difficult night for Bournemouth. And yeah, I'll be quite confident on Liverpool scoring well in this game.
Yeah, you'd have to think there's a response, but not going to be a response. No, I don't know when it's coming. Adrian, Clarke, you're delving back into League One. Walsall to beat Grimsby. Big price, 2.4 AC.
Yeah, League Two this one. But that's why it's made best bet ahead of my other EFL choices because of the price. Walsall look good under Mike Flynn, and they're at home to newly promoted Grimsby, who haven't set the world on fire at all. I think they've scored 2 goals in their 4 games so far. I think they've played 1 less than the others. The only win they got was a 90th minute winner at Rochdale, who are the weakest side in the division based on what we've seen so far. So I think that Grimsby are, nothing special at all. Walsall, for me, a very, very good team. They've kept 3 clean sheets already. They've got a good 0-0 draw at Gillingham last time out. But at home, I think they've had a couple of good wins already. They've got an excellent defensive record this season, Walsall, in terms of of goals conceded, but also XG against. It's the second best in open play of anyone in League Two. So they're basically just offering up very, very little. And Grimsby have looked a little bit impotent up front. So it might only need 1 goal for them to win it, 1 or 2, and they're more than capable of doing that, Walsall. Danny Johnson is the second top scorer in League Two at the moment with 5 goals. So they've got a striker in form as well. So yeah, just looks like a home banker to me. And I was surprised not to see Walsall odds on for this. So get 2.4 while you can is my advice.
Yeah, good man. All right, it's going to help our ROI if that gets up to 2.4. Mark, you're going to La Liga, I think, for the first time this season for your best bet. Miguel might be able to pronounce this. Cadiz against Athletic. Bilbao have been really stingy defensively, Mark. Is that the angle here? But offensively, they don't look like they're shooting the lights out of it as well. 2.25 is 1.8 under 2.25.
Yeah, it's just 2 teams who are struggling to put the ball in the back of the net. They've combined. It's the first 2 match days. They played 4 games, and between them, they scored just once. Cadiz were beaten by Sociedad on the opening day, 1-0, then lost 2-0 at Osasuna. They managed only 4 shots on target, 10 shots from inside the penalty box, and an accumulative XG of just 1.23. Defensively, they can be a little bit open at times, but I think they can be more robust or tend to be more robust on home soil. And unders have landed in 13 of the last 18 as hosts. You're playing Athletic, now coached by Ernesto Valverde. Started reasonably well in terms of results, 0-0 at home to Mallorca, and then beat Valencia 1-0 at home last week. But just age-old concerns for Athletic since Aduriz retired. 35 shots, 18 from inside the box, but just the 1 goal from an XG of 2.65. And that's going to prove their downfall when they're chasing European positions this season, as they just can't score. They don't have the ability to convert their opportunities. But defensively, as you say, they've been excellent. Only conceded 2 shots on target so far. But on the road, they can be pretty hard to watch. 15 of the last 19 away have gone unders. 11 of those went under 1.5 goals as well. So quite happy to see the goal line at 2.25 here. It just means that if we back under 2.25, if there's exactly 2 goals or fewer, we're actually making profit here. So 3 goals or more, and the bet is bust. Exactly 2 goals, and it's a half stakes winner. These 2 teams, in terms of non-penalty expected goal averages through the first 2 rounds, are producing 1.8 and 1.86, which is pretty dismal and dreary stuff from open play, if you like. So not expecting much entertainment on Monday night.
All right. Good stuff. Yeah. Turgid affair expected there. we're back next week. It's going to be Thursday because we've got midweek Premier League, so we're getting back into our Thursday grooves. And my thanks to Adrian, Clarke, Miguel, Delaney, Mark O'Hare. Pleasure as always, gentlemen. Good fun. Don't forget, if you're watching us now on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. Click the subscribe button, or if you're listening to us on the podcast apps, please leave us a preferential review if you're enjoying the content. Presume you are, or else you wouldn't be listening. Gentlemen, pleasure as always. As I said, we'll be back next week. Best luck with your bets, and we'll chat to you then. Bye for now.